Lucas, thank you so much for choosing to speak to me today. Obviously, I know you're very busy balancing your two seasons. How are you and how are you feeling ahead of the rest this weekend?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm looking forward to Jerez. I think that Jerez will be a good track for me and the bike. At the minute, we're struggling with the Junior GP bike a little bit just for setup and just overall, we need to find a step. But I'm more than confident that this step will come this weekend just because Jerez really suits the Honda, the fast and flowing nature, and it also suits my style, which is that fast and flowing nature.
No, Jerez is such an iconic track for bike racing, and it's absolutely stunning. Obviously, we have looked at the weather, and we've seen it's very hot. So, hopefully that doesn't impact anything too much. But as you touched upon, you are in Junior GP now, and also in the Red Bull Rookies series. So you've had a big progression, and you're only 17. So, massive gains made by you just because of how talented and fast you are. Um, just wanted to start speaking to you about your racing history because, as I just said, you are only still 17, but you've achieved so much already in your career. So, can you just tell us a little bit about what your journey into racing was, kind of how you got into it?
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's weird. I'm only 17, but I've been racing 10 years, so it's quite weird. My first time on a motorbike was when I was 7. So my mum and dad had seen like this is something that I kind of wanted to do. We'd watch it every weekend. We were like massive super fans. And we like my dad kind of sat down to me and was like, "Look, is this something you'd want to do?" And obviously, me being a little kid, yeah, yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it. So yeah, for my birthday, they booked a lesson to ride a motorbike around in like a local place. So we went there. It was only like a really tiny track. It's closed down now, but we went there, like enjoyed it so much, and then from that weekend on, it was pretty much every weekend going back, going back, going back, and learning, 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 and then eventually, you buy your own helmet, you buy your own gloves, you buy your own boots, levers, etc. Then you end up you buy a bike, and then um, from there we ventured out, we found other tracks, we started going to other tracks, um, and then from there it just kind of was like, well, what do we do from here? And then at that point we'd gone to like my dad was up one night watching TV and he'd seen like the British mini bike racing series, which is where it was Fab Racing, but it was labeled as British mini bikes, and we thought like my dad obviously thought, oh, I'll record it and let Lucas watch it in the morning to see, like let him see it. So we saw it and then we were like, yeah, let's do it. And I think my dad was almost putting me on the spot a little bit, as in he was like, "Oh yeah, let's go to the next round." Turns out the next round was really local, so we went to it, and then yeah, we sort of like let's give it a shot. So we got a bike that was eligible for the championship, got some other stuff, and then yeah, we just went racing basically, and then from there it was just every year, every weekend, track practicing, 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 every year racing, 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 and then yeah, it just kind of all came together.
That's so cool. So, fab racing is so important to young riders coming through now. Can you just talk to me a little bit about how they maybe helped you in particular, or what kind of support they gave you, obviously trying to progress through the ranks and up into Talent Cup?
Yeah, no, they were really good. But obviously before we'd ever started racing, the first ever race we'd seen was a fab race. So the first ever race round we went to was a fab race, and they were really helpful in, explaining what we needed to do to get everything prepared to go to the next round. And then every year they put on an amazing championship with an amazing level for the British kids to go race, improve, and prepare themselves for the British Talent Cup.
Right, they sound like they've been really instrumental to your progression into racing. So obviously they're doing God's work, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
you said that you were a super fan of racing when you were younger, obviously, with your parents. Was there anyone in particular who inspired you?
I'd probably say Shane Byrne was a big one. Obviously, living in England, we'd watch British Superbikes. So watching that, that was in sort of the time where Shane was dominating, and people like him, Tom Sykes in World Superbike, I was a huge fan. I loved Jorge Lorenzo, people like that. And I think as well, maybe a little bit of Danny Pedrosa, like just the guys that were at the front in that sort of era where I grew up were just some people that I looked up to.
Yeah, you've got some absolutely mega role models there. If there's anyone to look up to, in BSB and Worlds. It's shaky burn, isn't it, really? So um, lovely to hear how inspired you were by then. So you touched upon that you were with Fab Racing in the mini motors and things. How did you then go on to do Talent Cup? Because obviously you've gone from like a little tiny mini moto to one of the bigger bikes. What was that progression like for you?
So my progression through the mini motors was really fast. I went in 1 year from AC40 rookies to LC Elites, which is from the smallest and slowest mini bikes to the biggest and or fastest mini bikes. And that I did that all in 1 year. And really, I was not talented at that point. I was one of those who was at the back, not really. I think my best result before then was about a seventh or eighth, which was nothing impressive. I mean, the grids were massive back then, and it was packed full of talent. But I was never really the one to watch. So we decided, it's not working. Let's move up to the mini GP 50s. So then I got on the 50 and had an all right year. And then the next year we continued on and I ended up scoring real well. I think I finished fifth in the championship, but I ended up with like maybe like 20 odd podiums, something like that, something ridiculous. And that was a really good year for me. And then from there, the next year I moved into the 70 class where I was battling with future British Talent Cup champion Johnny Garnes. And I managed to beat him. There was a few other guys in there as well. But no, we had a really good year that year, managed to win that. And then once we'd sort of won it, I at that point I was 12 and the age limit for British Talent Cup was 12. So we went and got our ACU license and then bought a Motor 3 bike and then thought, you know what, we've already got the bike, we've got the license, we might as well just go have a wild card. So we ended up wild card in the last two rounds in 2020.
Is it true in your wild card that you scored points, or did I dream that?
I think I got P11. I lost the top 10 on the last lap.
Oh,
And then I did Brands Hatch and I did Donington Park. And Donington Park it was a mixed race. Went out on wets, switched to slicks on the grid, and then I made it from like P17, P18 up to P8 and then dropped back to P11. And then in Brands Hatch, I think I was again I was in the points pushing almost top 10.
wow. So in your first two races, you're already pushing up the front of the
Mm.
pack. So even though you said you weren't talented, maybe when you were a bit younger, you definitely showed your talents when you went into Talent Cup then. So you were there for 4 years, if you don't include your two wild card rounds. So you got very familiar with the series. But in 2023, let's just talk about that kind of period then, because I've been told, well, you've confirmed it to me earlier, that 2023, at the end of it, you were considering not doing 2024. And obviously, then something changed, and you ended up winning the championship in 2024 by 19 points. So, what
Mm.
was the change? What changed your mind to compete in 2024?
I think it was the fact that so the reason first off, the reason why we didn't want to continue in British Talent Cup was because of size and weight. I was heavy, I was big, it's not really a combination you want for Moto 3 at all. So we were like, should we not? And we still had the bikes. We hadn't sold any bikes yet. We'd still had like awful setup. My team was pulling out as well. So I had no team. I had everything to run it, but we couldn't run it ourselves. We don't have the space. So we were like, should we do this? Should we not? And we were looking at a sport bike to maybe move into that, get off the Moto 3s, and yeah, so we were like, should we not? But sport bike was a bit of an unproven class at that point. We didn't know sort of because you can go out and spend X amount of pounds on one bike, but another bike might be super fast, and then you're not going to do anything. So yeah, we were just sort of like, we'll take another year in Talent Cup, sit back, watch that unfold, and then move there next year or whatever. So yeah, and at the end of the pre-season, or so sort of pre-seasony time. So it was after Christmas, after New Year, around the start of January, mid-January. We still hadn't decided what we wanted to do. I had no ride. Um, I was actually meant to ride for a team in British Talent Cup, but it never really came to fruition. We just sort of not didn't fall out, but we didn't. we both just kind of went our separate ways. So yeah, and then Rich and Keith from Victoria House Mortimer Racing Academy, I think it's called now. Um, they came to us and basically said like we'd love to have you on our bikes, and yeah, from there we sort of struck up a deal and went racing.
And won it in your final year.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that feeling then when you? Because obviously this was years in Talent Cup of hard work. Um, in that year, 2024, you got 3 wins, 5 seconds, and 4 thirds. So a regular on the podium, but also in the points as well to lead up to that win for you. What was that like? What was the feeling when you knew you were the Talent Cup champion?
I think like obviously the whole season I'd had a real sort of strong feeling that I had a real strong chance of winning it, you know. Looking at just who moved up from the year before, who'd stayed, I was gonna be there or thereabouts no matter what. And I think it was after the win in Navarra where we really thought like, okay, this, we could win this, we can have a real strong crack at it. So yeah, I think throughout most of the year, I had obviously that kind of confidence of thinking, oh yeah, I am the one that's, in not in the hot seat, but I am one of the real strong ones. But I think it was around about autumn time, so second to last round, where we were like, I think the gap was like 30 points at one point, and we had the races that there wasn't many left, so we were sort of starting to get to that point where it's like you have to start thinking about the championship and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was sort of the the first autumn race. I thought, yeah, okay, I have a real good chance now. But then obviously disaster struck in autumn race two. But then it come back again in Donington race one where I was like, I won the race and I thought, this is it. Do you know what I mean? I haven't got much to do now. And then race two, I crashed and it was like back to zero. And then going out in the final race, I think I had a 23-point lead. So I was like, you know, you'd have to be really skilled to lose this now. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it was kind of never truly over until it was over.
That's really interesting because I hear all the time, not just in bikes, but just in racing in general, people who are, in contention for that championship say, "Oh, you don't really think about it. You don't really think about it." And I never believed them, but you just confirmed that it was actually autumn, and you're like, "Yeah, actually, this
Yeah.
could be something I win." In my head, if I was you guys, it'd be like forefront of my mind every single race. So the fact you don't even consider it is wild.
Yeah, it's a 50-50. Like if you think about it every race, you might take less risks and end up not finishing as well. But then again, you might, if you don't think about it completely, you might just go out there, take loads of risks and end up crashing and having a DNF, which, you don't want either. So I think it was one of them where I just kind of was taking it race by race, just purely thinking about the race and focusing on performing in that race, not focusing on the championship at all, really. Just keep sort of taking it race by race, just making sure I finished. That was the big priority, and making sure I was on the podium.
No, that's so interesting because, as I said, yeah, it'd be like in the forefront of my mind every single race, especially if you know you're quick or whatever. Especially in testing, I know you can't take everything in testing by gospel, but you kind of get a little glimpses of who's going to be quick and not. So that's really interesting. But you said it was, you were heavy on the bike. Obviously, you were one of the older ones in Talent Cup at that time, and as I've said many times, you're familiar with the championship by your last season. Did you feel any extra pressure going into 2024 because you had been in it so long, or because you were so well known in Talent Cup, or is it not something you really think about?
No, I think I didn't. The reason why I didn't feel so much pressure is because one, I wasn't sort of thinking about it in that sort of way, but I was also sort of thinking I was too confident that I had a good chance. Do you know what I mean? And I think it wasn't so much pressure because like if whatever I saw, whether it was a news write up or whatever, I didn't get mentioned once for even top five in the championship. And that kind of helped, was just like, well, there's no pressure on me. No one expects anything from me. Let's go and show them what they've missed. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. Obviously, I can't relate in racing terms, but the best motivation is always to be undermined by people, and you racers are a different kind of breed when it comes to that motivation. But it's good you don't see that as a negative because I think obviously for you having been in that class for so long and people
Mm,
not mentioning you, it's really good you spun that positively, and it's just a testament to your
mm,
character, even though you were like 16, which is absolutely wild. Um, so you've got a very mature head on your shoulders, so that's a really good attribute to have. Let's move on then from the past and focus on the present. You now race, as I said, in Junior GP and
mm.
in the Red Bull Rookies. So my first question is, what made you, or I guess it's a handful of things really, but why did you go to those two as opposed to say something like sport bike or something maybe a bit more familiar? What made you make that change?
No, the main reason is obviously British Talent Cup is on the road to MotoGP. Um, Rebel Rookies, we've got Northern Talent Cup, Asia Talent Cup, Rebel Rookies, Junior GP, European Talent Cup, obviously British Talent Cup. It's all on the road to MotoGP. So my natural next progression would either be European Talent Cup, Rebel Rookies, or Junior GP. And yeah, the reason why British Talent Cup exists is we're all fighting for a spot on the Junior GP grid and the Rebel Rookie grid. So no, I got offered both of them, and I was never going to say no.
So I ask you, are there any differences between the two series you race in now, or are the two more similar than people might think?
Ooh, yes and no. So obviously that there's definitely similarities in the level. Like there's a lot of the same riders in Junior GP to Rebel Rookies, but obviously the bikes are different. Uh, the Rebel Rookie bike is a sole bike for Rebel Rookies. You can't buy it. You don't find it anywhere else. Whereas the Junior GP bike, it's the same one as Moto 3. Like you have a lot more bikes as well that are floating around, which are full factory Moto 3 bikes from previous years of Moto 3 and stuff like that. So they're different bikes. The level is very similar. If I had to say something, I'd say Junior GP is a little bit of a harder championship just because of when you've got Rebel Rookies, it's the fastest from European Talent Cup, fastest from British Talent Cup, fastest from Northern Talent Cup. It's the fastest from all the junior championships across the world. And obviously there's going to be little different like level changes just from certain championships. Like for instance, Junior GP compared to British Talent Cup, there's a big level change in just the skill and the talent of everyone because Junior GP is the fastest championship you will ever race ever. But I think Junior GP is definitely difficult as well because the bikes are so perfect. Everything's perfect. You've got to be almost like a robot to ride one, whereas the KTM and the Rebel Rookies is a lot more forgiving. You can push it a lot harder. You can have moments. You can sort of ride it how you would ride more of a production based bike, which is what I've sort of. Although I've been on the talent bike, it's still a production Moto 3 basically. But no, the championships they're really difficult. They're definitely get underestimated in England of the level. But no, they're both real top level championships.
I think especially for those who are progressing from, say, British Talent Cup, obviously it's a great pathway um, to that higher level of racing. And it's interesting to hear you say how difficult they are because I agree with you. I think people really do undermine, just in general, how difficult bike racing is. So obviously from a rider themselves who you've been riding for a long time now, to hear you say how difficult
Yeah.
that jump was still is
Mm.
wild.
No, no,
Um,
I was the same. I was like when I was in British Talent Cup, we'd always get told like, "Oh, the boys over there, they are fast," and you just think, "No, no, no," because you're at the front of a championship, you think, "Yeah, no, there's no one faster than me." And I had that when I went for the wild card in Junior GP. I was thinking like, "Oh yeah, if I get points, it won't be too bad." Do you know what I mean? It's all right. Do you know what I mean? I nearly didn't qualify. I think, like on the verge of not qualifying. So that just shows you how big the level is, like how big the jump is, and it's something that you just don't acknowledge. You think, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, like you get told it, but you think, yeah, yeah, nah, it can't be true. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's something that it needs to sort of be understood for the Brits to understand just where the level is.
So you are only in your rookie season of the Red Bull rookies, but people potentially looking to move on from Talent Cup might be wondering how to progress similarly to you in the future. So do you have any advice for those who may want to follow in your footsteps?
Um, for me, everything was sort of progressed from a foundation. So a foundation of literally sounds crazy, but just riding every weekend. Just no matter where, no matter what, just riding every weekend in like consistently. And from there, I sort of managed to build a good base. And then that allowed me to sort of, when I went to Rebel Rookies, British Talent Cup, Junior GB, it allowed me to progress even more with the finer details of riding. But I think obviously now it's a lot harder. But if you have a local kart track, don't complain because it won't stay there forever. Mine didn't, but just run thousands of laps around it. That's what I did. I had a small track near mine. Some people may know it, Angering. It was literally a 30-second lap, like 30-second on the dot lap, and I must have spanned about a million laps there. Like from the age of 7 to the age of 14, I was there every weekend, week in, week out. So just keep riding and just listen as well. When you go to British Talent Cup, when you go to Junior GP, Rebel Rookies, you have rider coaches. Listen and use what the rider coaches tell you to go and progress your riding out on track.
So just listen to your coaches at the moment and then
Yeah,
just because I know what they're talking about, clearly proofs of the pudding with you, really,
100%.
literally. But if there was one thing, so as if you're talking to yourself now, obviously you're only literally just pretty much starting the season, it's all kicking off a little bit now. Um, so there's still a long way to go until the end of the year. But
Mm.
with what you've already learned, if there was one thing you could have told yourself or someone could have told you when starting in
Mm.
junior GP or Rebel Rookies, maybe like in the little transition period from Talent
Yeah.
Cup to where you are now, what one thing do you wish someone told you then?
I think there's like a couple of small things. I'd say first off, just it may only be a small win, but treat it like a big win. You know, when you make a little breakthrough or something, because it is difficult. Like that side of racing, it's really difficult. So when you make a small breakthrough or you have a good result, be happy about it. Don't just brush it under the carpet and think, oh, well, next week I've got to do better. Be happy about what you've achieved, and it keeps the morale there. I'd say as well, also just keep working. Like no matter what, when you're at the race weekends, keep working because like now, when we go in like out in between sessions, we have to keep working because like from session 1 to session 2, people drop insane amount of time. So no matter what you do in FP1, it doesn't matter because you're going to be 3 seconds faster in FP2. It's just you have to keep focusing on this is during the weekend. You have to keep focusing on the next session and where you're gonna improve.
Is it easy to keep focus? Obviously, I know that, you don't necessarily have the same kind of media duties as, say, like a fully blown MotoGP rider, but is it easy to get distracted from that due to the potential like media stuff you have to do, or is it quite easy to keep tuned in to, you're here for riding, let's focus on the next session, the next one, the next.
I think it's one of them where like it depends person to person. Like for me personally, I'm pretty easygoing. Do you know what I mean? I like to be when I'm at a race weekend, I don't like to be all like hot-headed, stressed, running around. Like I like to be someone that's pretty chilled, like goes with the flow, just enjoying racing, but also still there to do the job at hand. I think for me, the media duties, it's not so much of something that I'm too fussed about. You know what I mean? I will do whatever I need to do. Um, but it's for me, obviously, it's a little bit hard to get distracted because I'm pretty chilled. But no, I think some people can, some people can't. And if you can, you'll have to find a way to just almost work around that to go and do your job.
Yeah, obviously we've spoken now for a little, almost about an hour. And one thing I've definitely got from you is how easygoing you are. So that's an attribute that's good to have, especially when you're under the microscope sometimes in racing, because it is such a high pressure environment. So it's good to keep a level head, which obviously you've got. We're still very early in the season, as I've said. But are there any goals you hope to reach this season? Obviously, it's your debut season in these classes, and you've already said how difficult they are. So, is there any like little aims you have and things you hope to tick off this year?
I mean, obviously with rookies now, with having P6 in Le Mans was a breakthrough. Yeah, it was in the wet, but I'd like to first off actually finish both races in one round. That'd be a start. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to obviously be in the points. They're sort of my aims is stay on the bike, stay in the points, and then obviously in rookies you've got a whole lot of nations, but there's only two Brits, so I'd like to be top Brit. That would be perfect in my eyes. Um, but yeah, I think for junior GP as well, it's just to keep improving. Um, Same as rookies. Like the main goal of this season is just keep improving. Um, for rookies, obviously, I've said I've got smaller goals, but for junior GP, it's not so much anything smaller yet. Obviously, I was close to the points in Estoril. So maybe if I can get inside the points in junior GP in a couple of races, it'd be really nice. But I'm hoping to sort of be closer to the leader every round, every race, and just keep improving to then at the end of the season, I should be near enough in the points consistently.
That's really interesting. You just touched that you are only one of two Brits racing this year. This is a really off the cuff question, and one you might not have thought about before because obviously you are so young. So I don't know if it really springs to your mind. But do you feel like a sense, how do I phrase this? Do you feel like a sense of responsibility to represent the Brits well? Because obviously it is so dominated by Spaniards or Italians. Do you feel like a sense that you have to do Britain proud, obviously being only one of two in the series?
Mm, I think yes and no. It's not really something that I've thought about before, but obviously now that you bring it up, it is kind of is there a little bit, you know. There's only two of us. You wear your flag on your sleeve. So yeah, I'd say it's nice to sort of be able like to have people from England be able to look in and see, oh, we've got two Brits here and they're not actually doing too bad. Do you know what I mean? We're actually sort of there or thereabouts with rookies, you know. There's sort of been a trend, and this isn't at anyone, it's there's sort of been a trend for the last couple of years where when the Brits do go over, they've been sort of near the back. Whereas I think this year, in rookies at least, we're sort of yeah, we're sort of near the back, but we're not stone dead last every race. We're sort of almost pushing into the point, starting to really like show how much the country's level is improving and how much the riders that are coming in are improving.
No, I do think you are representing Britain very well. And as you said, there's not many of you. Um, so fair play for getting in there in the first place because obviously that is difficult in itself.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, you two are definitely representing GB very well. So on the topic of being a Brit, then I don't know how many times I've said in this interview that you were in Talent Cup for a fair few years, and now you've obviously gone European and flying over to everywhere, Spain, France, wherever, right?
Yeah.
But is a move back to a UK series like British Superbikes, potentially something like Stock or Sport, is something like that something you're thinking about, or would you prefer to stay European and potentially internationally in a few years?
My final aim, so my bigger picture is world championship. I want to be world champion, whether that's World Superbikes, MotoGP, Moto2, Junior World Champ, whatever. I want to be world champion. And you're not world champion if you're British Superbike champion. So obviously I'm not saying that I don't want to be in British Superbikes ever again. Obviously, sometimes you don't make that choice. But it's my bigger picture is I would like to stay in the European scene, in the World Championship scene, and push that way into that sort of side of motorbike racing.
That's not the answer I wanted you to give. I wanted to say, yes, Leah, I'm going to come back. We're going to be together again. That's okay. Um, do you miss the UK circuits then? Because obviously they are a bit different, let's say, to, you know, your other international circuits. So do you miss racing on home soil?
I think yeah, I think the British tracks through like they breed sort of a certain skill set of dealing with, well, when you go on the curbs in England, you it's a mistake usually. Do you know what I mean? The curbs there are horrible. The tracks are up, they're down, they're bumpy. When it rains, it's slippy. It's like that. The tracks don't get used 24/7, so there's not a lot of rubber on them. So they're not the grippiest tracks in the world. So I think it breeds that sort of that rider that's a little bit more braver, willing to take a little bit more risks, and is genuinely or generally better in that sort of like higher risk environment of the track goes this way, that way, and it's up and it's down and it's bumpy, it's lower grip. When I'm sort of faced with something like that in the junior world scene, I sort of tend to favor that a little bit better than some other riders. But no, I think it's two different sides, it's a different way of riding a motorbike.
Do you think having this completely different breed of track then um, sets up Brits more favourably for going to this level? Because obviously, those who potentially haven't had experience with these kind of undulating, bumpy tracks that you come across every now and again, they don't have that experience like we do. Do you think it
Mm.
favours the Brits, or do you think it's a hindrance because you aren't used to those kind of flatter, more smooth circuits?
I mean, 100% it's a hindrance because the only smooth flat circuit we have is Silverstone. And if you're racing British Talent Cup, you get to race it once a year. If you're racing Stock 1000, you get to race it once a year. Apart from that, you won't ride the track. You physically you can't even go on a track day or anything. So it's definitely a hindrance. Because all the tracks I race now are Silverstone-esque. They're not Brands Hatch-esque or Alton Park-esque or even Cadwell-esque, So I think the closest one we have or the one we race is Estoril, and maybe Algarve, but Algarve seems to favour a little bit the British riders. They seem to do a little bit better there. And Estoril is again a little bit better for the British riders, just because they're a little bit more up and down, and a little bit more camber, off camber, and stuff like that. So I think if we had more tracks that are a bit smoother, a bit faster flowing, more GP style tracks, it would be definitely a bigger benefit towards the goal of European and MotoGP riders.
I don't take MSV. I'm not sure they could do a lot actually about changing the up and downs of Cadwell. I don't think they're going to take the mountain away anytime soon. Um, but that's really interesting to see you say it's a hindrance because obviously, I guess the large majority of what you race now is so flat and even like Silverstone is. So that's really interesting. I only have one more question for you. But thank you very much for your time anyway, because I know I've taken up a lot of it, but I really appreciate it. Just to close it on, we've spoken about your journey kind of into racing and then all throughout your career until now, and obviously in the future, you wanting to be world champion. Um, what advice would you give to, say you're speaking to little 7-year-old Lucas, what advice would you give to him or anyone similar who are only dreaming now of being a professional bike racer? What would you tell them?
I think my big thing obviously is still just ride every weekend. That's what obviously I think there's many different ways that you can improve and do all sorts of like stuff to improve yourself. But for me, what worked was just riding every weekend, whether it's British mini bikes, Cool Fab Racing, whether it's just a private hire track day or you just go into your local for the weekend or whatever. Just ride every weekend. I think for about 4 or 5 years, I rode every single weekend, both days, just like every week. And that was the biggest thing for me to provide that sort of baseline because I wasn't in when I was really young on the mini motors, I wasn't that standout rider. It wasn't until later on when I moved into British Talent Cup and the 70 class where I sort of became that standout. So I think just keep riding, and also for the dads, don't put every all the money into just making the bike better. Make the rider better. You can spend money on coaching, you can spend money on going to Spain. That's something that I got told, and it was something that we used. And if you've got the best bike on the grid, but you've got the worst rider, you're not going to go win the race. If you've got the worst rider, or well, the worst bike but the best rider, you still have a chance. So, you know, if you're going to spend X amount of pounds, spend it on rider coaching, improving the rider, not the bike.
That's great advice, and actually not one I've heard anyone speak about before is investing in your own son or daughter, rather than necessarily the parts of the bikes. But no, your determination, I hope it's come across how focused and driven you are, because obviously speaking to you now for the last, say, hour or so, that's definitely come across really well. So all
Yeah.
I have left to say to you is good luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully more points, potentially even a podium. Fingers crossed for you.
Crossed.
Or a win. I mean, win would be great, but obviously,
I'll take you
baby
for all.
steps. Baby steps. Best of luck for the rest of the season and continue doing the Brits proud because you are. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.